Paper Mario is one of the most divisive franchises ever. A lot of gamers will glaze the Thousand Year Door as one of the greatest games of all time, and then talk about the more recent games as some of the biggest disgraces to gaming ever. And I mean, to be fair, Thousand Year Door is great, but does that really mean we should discredit everything that came after? I mean, surely not all the other Paper Mario games are as bad, right? Well, there's one Paper Mario game that I think deserves a lot more praise than it got. One that just doesn't get brought up nearly as much. And that game is Sticker Star. Nah, just kidding y'all, that game is Super Paper Mario. Every franchise has that one oddball game, and that's what Super Paper Mario is. It didn't have the original RPG mechanics of the first two, but it also didn't have a lack of story and personality like the later games that came out. And for this reason, this game just kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people, and that's a shame, because I adore this game. Now, maybe a part of this is because it's the first Paper Mario game I ever played. I know, I'm not like a part of the superior Thousand Year Door player base, but I truly think this game is underrated, and that's what I'm here to talk about. I feel like it's time we visit the Paper Mario game that everyone forgot about. Super Paper Mario was released on April 9th, 2007. What originally was meant to be a GameCube game would be pushed back and released on the Wii. This game would be significantly different from the previous entries. The game was now mostly in 2D and was more of a side-scrolling platformer than an RPG. And I think this is what really threw a lot of Paper Mario fans off from this game. It looked and felt completely different. But as I mentioned, this was originally meant to be a GameCube game. And when you think about it in this context, it makes a lot of sense. The game was more akin to a spin-off. The developers wanted to take the 2D side-scrolling levels from Thousand Year Door and make it into a fully fledged game. And so that's what led to the creation of this. Had this been released on the GameCube like it was originally intended to be, I think people would have seen this in a more positive light. We would have had a traditional RPG game alongside a spin-off that was a different approach. But alas though, this game was forced to be released on the Wii. And with it being released on the Wii, that meant it had motion controls. Yeah, this game was during the era of Nintendo forcing everyone to use shitty motion controls in their games. This game's use of them wasn't too atrocious, unlike some other games. But it still is kind of annoying that you had to use them whenever you want to use an item or something. It's also a requirement to use the pixel tippy, and this just gets annoying quickly, because if you want to progress in certain levels, you have to point the remote at the screen. It just kind of breaks the immersion when you're playing. Oh, yeah, what's a pixel, you might be asking? Well, that's the new side characters for this game. Yeah, so in previous games, you would have partners to aid you during battle. But with this game throwing the RPG mechanics out the window, they had a new version of partners called pixels. Throughout the worlds of the game, you can unlock various pixels in them. They could do all sorts of stuff, from breaking blocks, blowing up stuff, and that's about it. Yeah, the new partner system is really not it in this game. Like, a couple of them are useful, but oh my god, half of these are just worthless. Like, how many times do you actually use Fleep? A lot of them are really gimmicky, and it often feels like the level designs have to force in ways to make them useful. Like, oh look, there's this not super obvious tear in the sky. I wonder who I have to use here. I think the only ones I used often during my playthrough were like Cudge and Boomer. And there's also, of course, Tippy, who I mentioned earlier. She's definitely the best pixel in the game, not because of her abilities, they kind of suck. The whole point at your Wii remote at the screen to discover hidden things is so gimmicky. It's not fun at all, and it made me paranoid that I was constantly missing hidden secrets in the levels. I'd be constantly pointing my rear remote at the screen, thinking there were some deep hidden secrets, only to discover that you use it like once or twice in each world. However, Tippy is great because she actually has dialogue. And don't worry, she's not another annoying fairy like Navi. Tippy actually has a lot of personality and is a very important character in the story, which we'll talk about soon. But as far as the other pixels, they really don't do anything. They say like 2 lines when you first meet them and then just basically becomes item. So yeah, that was the new partner mechanic they added. The level system was once again included, but it's really simple now. Your stats are health and damage, and that's it. Honestly, there's like no need to grind levels in this game. It's fairly easy unless you suck like me. You probably won't even die at all. And because of that, the battle system feels very lackluster. Most of it just consists of jumping on this enemy and then they're dead. Maybe you'll use your hammer like once in a while, but that's about it. Because of that, a lot of the items in this game just don't feel a whole lot useful. I think the only ones I ever used were the healing items. I barely remember that I have offensive items in my inventory and usually just throw them out. There's also a cooking system in this game like the previous ones, which is really fun to mess around and see what kind of ingredients you get and what you can make out of them. But like most of these dishes you don't really need. I pretty much just did it for the sake of trying to collect everything. And speaking of collecting, there's also the game card system. So I actually do think this is one of the coolest parts of Super Paper Mario. While exploring levels, you can find cards of various enemies and characters. Once collected, these cards provide benefits like extra damage to a certain enemy or even things like unlimited time in 3D. It's a super cool system that I think has so much potential, but unfortunately a lot of the cool ones you don't get until the end game. And as I mentioned before, you don't really need the extra damage and benefits because it's already pretty easy. So similar to cooking, it just ends up being another collectible for the sake of collecting. And for my 100%ers out there, there's a lot of these to collect, so start looking. You can either get them in the levels or by my favorite system, gambling. Yes, you can buy random packs of these and have the chance of receiving a new card. It's basically like opening a Pokemon pack. And just like opening up Pokemon packs, a lot of these are bullshit as you can get duplicates. So yeah, it's a bit of a grind to get them all. The last mechanics of the game I want to talk about is, well, the biggest one. This is the 3D mechanic, pretty much the entire selling point of this game. So while this game is seemingly a 2D platform, it turns out there is literally an entire 3D version of each level. No joke, you can literally go from 2D to 3D in the click of a button. I feel like no one ever talks about how impressive this is for a game. I've never seen any game replicate this style before. It's pretty cool. However, I have some problems with this. The fact that these pretty well crafted 3D levels are hidden behind a feature that only works for one character is kind of crazy. Mario is the only one that can change from 2D to 3D, and this basically makes him the go-to character in the game. Yeah, you might use Bowser once or twice to deal extra damage, but like Peach and Luigi are only useful for the oddball puzzle you need them for. Other than that, you're better off playing as Mario. So many extra details and items are hidden within the 3D worlds, and not only that, but the 3D levels are way more interesting than just playing in 2D. There's so many extra design details that are hidden behind this feature that you would never notice in the regular levels. Which is why I find it crazy how limited this gimmick is. Until you beat the game, your time in 3D is short. After a certain amount of seconds, you begin to take damage, and so this means that you have to constantly switch back to 2D. It really disrupts the flow of gameplay here. I really think one of the game's missed opportunities was the lack of upgrades. They could have given us some kind of timer upgrade for the 3D. Other upgrades like an increased inventory would have been nice to have as well. I mean, sure, items are practically useless, but like I still want to collect ingredients for unlocking recipes. But moving on from that was kind of the game's mechanics and features, and I know a lot of this I've kind of criticized, and I have a few problems with it, but the really saving grace of Super Paper Mario and what makes this game truly stand out as its own is the story. This is the game that I played as a kid and fell in love with. And when I went to go play it again before making this video, I fell in love with it once more. Yes, it has shortcomings like I just mentioned, but the story is truly its saving grace and what makes this game so special and different. I mean, there's a reason why YouTubers made hour-long videos on the story's meaning. This game is just so full of personality and funny moments. To put it simply, it's a love story between a guy who turned evil and a girl that just wants to be with him once more. I was surprised at how deep and emotional the story gets. In between worlds, you get this little bit of text between two characters talking. You can tell there's some sort of forbidden romance going on, but we don't know who these people are yet. Well, spoilers, it's Tippy and the game's villain. So this game kind of starts off like your typical Mario adventure. Peach is kidnapped, no surprise there, and Mario and Luigi go to rescue her. When they get to the castle, they then discover the true villain of the story, a guy named Count Black, who wears a cape and a monocule. He's basically like your typical edgy teenager idea of a villain. Basically, since he lost Tiffany, he goes on a rampage to end the entire world, because if he can't love anymore, then screw everyone else. It seems like a great reason. So very quickly, the story takes a turn from your classic Mario formula to something different. And by something different, I mean Luigi is somewhat kind of useful for once. I said kinda. Now Mario must go on a journey to retrieve the pure hearts in order to stop the world from ending. He ends up in Flipside and meets Merlin and Tippy. Flipside serves as the game's central hub. This is where you can buy items, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. Compared to the previous entry, Flipside isn't nearly as exciting. A lot of characters here just lack a lot of personality. They all look similar in design, and they don't really say much. And that's kind of one of the problems of the story. Unless the characters are important, they don't really do anything at all. But with all that being said, I still find this area a little bit charming. As I said before, it's the central hub, so pretty much everything you need is located here. There's various shops you can go to, and there's also the Pit of Trials in this area, which is like the gauntlet where you go through 100 waves of enemies. There's also the underground area too, which is totally not a shady bar. Overall, this location has a decent amount of personality in terms of design. There's even a completely different side as well. Once you reach a certain point in the game, you can access the mirror hall, which then takes you to Flopside. Flopside is similar to Flipside, but it's basically like the hood version of the original town. Things are run down and everyone seems miserable, but this area is pretty cool to explore as you can make more complex recipes and buy later game items. So with that being said, let's take a look at the game's first world. The first level is pretty much your classic Mario level. It's got a grassy landscape, a few blocks, and that's about it. It's just pretty much a way to ease you into the game. Nothing crazy is really happening yet. The story is still pretty mellow and you're just dipping your feet into the water. I will say, I wish the game had a bit more going on for in the beginning. It's really hard to convey the wackiness of the story when your first level just looks like this. Thousand Year Door, in contrast, had a lot going on in the beginning. It pretty much lets you know right away that this is going to be a weird story. While Super starts off pretty good with the wedding sequence, things mellow down for quite some time. The next couple levels of World 1 are pretty basic. Thankfully though, they aren't just all grasslands, they actually do a pretty job expanding outside the traditional Mario World themes. One level is like this rocky area, the next is a desert, and the final one is the ruins. It's pretty diverse, and you even get a little mini boss fight in between with old chunks. And that's one of the things I love about this game, is the bosses. They all have their own wacky and interesting personalities. In between levels and worlds, we get these moments of dialogue between them. It's not a huge part of the story, but adds a lot of comedy and extra layer to the characters. In a lot of Mario games, the bosses are just there to be difficult, but here they are full of personality and are reoccurring characters. Level 1 then ends off with a boss fight against Fractal. This guy is nothing crazy, but it's a decent first boss and a nice callback to the older Paper Mario games. Moving on from this is where the game begins to find its footing. We get a little sequence in between where we can play as Peach. It's one of the few games where she's not a character from Mario to rescue. I like that we get to see the other side of what's going on. It's not just Mario's perspective. It makes you feel bad for Bowser's minions and even the quote-unquote villains of the story. World 2 starts off kind of mellow again. It's just a basic level with a cool sunset background. But right after we enter the mansion, that's when the game gets interesting. Now, I've heard people complain about this before, but I love the mission where you get like 1 million rupees. I understand why some people didn't like this. It's a little confusing, but to me it's one of the most memorable parts of the game. Basically, you break this vase, and now you're forced into slavery to pay off your debt. It's kind of a funny level as you have to go around and earn rubies to pay off workers for secrets. When I was a kid, I actually did think I would have to earn this by running on this hamster wheel. I had this plan to tape my Wii remote button down, but luckily I realized it wasn't necessary. But it's just kind of funny how they made you think you had to do that. And that's one of the big themes of this game, is being funny. The gameplay is often sacrificed to make the story more interesting. A lot of times the game has you do obscure things to solve the levels. Like for example, at a level you have to help out these hags to get a key. Luckily the first one gives you it after you help her, but she basically makes you backtrack all the way back, and you could still choose to help the other two, and so I did. And once I helped the last one, I was expecting some kind of reward or something, you know, but what did I get? I got a thank you. After all that backtracking and wasting time. And why did the game decide to do this? Because fuck you, that's why. It's both equally frustrating and funny at times, but nonetheless, it makes the experience very memorable. And speaking of memorable, let's talk about the third world. This one ends up with Tippy being kidnapped, and who's the one that ends up kidnapping her? A chameleon that's a nerdy weeb. Yeah, that's right, Nintendo is making fun of their player base. Nah, I'm just kidding, but I love this character. His name is Francis, and your whole goal during the world is to track him down and get Tippy back. When you finally do get to his fort, you get to see a bunch of references to nerdy things. Francis is a big fan of comics, collectibles, and cats apparently, and he also only lets hot babes into his castle. This ends up with a dating simulator at the end. You get to play as Peach, and you have to ask him a bunch of questions on things like how much money he makes. You know, only the important questions. It's a really funny moment in the game, and one of the reasons why I love this story. But after you defeat Francis, Tippy begins to show more emotion and gets closer to the group. And then we move on to the fourth level of the game. I didn't really care for this one. This one took place in space, and it's just okay. It was kind of fun at first, as it plays like an arcade space shooter, and it was kind of a unique gimmick, but after that, it just becomes a backtracking simulator. Seriously, there's so much backtracking, and that's something I have to complain about real quick, because this game doesn't have big levels. They make up for this with backtracking. There'll be so many times you come across a locked door or a puzzle, and you have to go back like 3 doors and then ask some random guy for a clue on how to open it. Seriously, almost every level has this, and it becomes very tedious. I think it's the reason why Worlds 4 and 5 are my least favorite. World 5 is especially atrocious because of how much it does it. You see these 3 blocks right here? You want to know how to solve it? Well, hey, it turns out you have to go to this random guy and get like this 50-digit password and enter it. And why do we want you to do this? Because it's funny and it makes the game artificially longer. It gets frustrating at a point, especially when I went to beat this in just a couple days. You can very quickly notice the repetitive level design. But hey, I mean, at least World 6 shouldn't be as repetitive, right? Son of a bitch. You're telling me I have to go through 100 levels to reach the end of this? This is going to take forever. Oh shoot, what's that? The world's ending? Thank God. I love this twist so much. You think that this is going to be a typical Mario adventure where you save the day and get to the end of the level, but no, that's not what happens. Instead, literally everyone dies. Okay, besides you guys still live and get to go back and explore the world. Luckily, Tippy pulled you out in time where that could have been. I mean, imagine if you died before the end of the adventure. Oh wait, I guess you do die as well. Yeah, so once again, another twist, your entire party is killed off. Right after the previous world ended, you get to go back and retrieve the pure heart. You then think now have to revive it, but in a quick turn of events, the villain Dementio appears and kills you. Literally, kills you. This then takes you into the next world, a place called the Underwear. Haha, yes, so funny. This world is both a reference to previous Mario games and Greek mythology. It's got a pretty cool design and has some eerie music as well. And you finally get to unlock Luigi here. Remember, I did say he was useful in this game. Besides that, you go on your quest to find the princess or something. I don't really know, I didn't read all the dialogue. I ain't trying to read all that. And then yeah, you end the world and revive the previous heart from World 6. After that, you are once again back, and it pretty much plays out like a typical level in the game. You have your 4 levels you have to go through, and you have to literally extend out of hell and go into heaven. It's a little wild. Along the way, you find Bowser, who then rejoins your party, and you also meet up with Peach, finally, who was the only one that made it into heaven, apparently. After you finally reach the top, you then get to the emotional climax of this level. Or supposedly emotional. I don't know. I barely read all the text here. There's just so much of it in this game. Like, don't get me wrong. It's funny and emotional at times, but sometimes I just want to get into the action, you know? Like, seriously, can everyone stop talking so much? Basically, the end of World of 7 is like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, a pure heart finally. Oh, I guess she sacrificed herself or something. Well, thank you. Okay. I did pay attention to the story somewhat, but like, with all the backtracking already and now tons of dialogue, I don't know if I can handle this. Finally, though, after the princess stopped yapping and gave us the pure heart, we move on to the climax of the story. This, of course, takes place in Count Bleck's castle. And it once again features more backtracking. Okay, but I did like this world as each level has a showdown between one of Bleck's minions. And during these showdowns, each respective character faces their rival. It's a really cool way to end the story, and it gives a lot more character to the villains, as they aren't really the bad guys anymore. Each of our characters chooses to sacrifice themselves to save the other villain. It's quite an emotional moment, and finally the game ends with a showdown between Mario and Count Bleck. After all this build-up, it's time to face the big bad. Let the battle begin. And, oh, killed him. Well, glad that's over. But in a turn of events, it's revealed that Count Bleck isn't the final villain. Instead, that is Dementio. You now face off the true big bad, an epic showdown that will be the battle of ages. Oh, killed him again. Yeah, these boss battles aren't too hard. They're pretty easy. But that didn't really matter to me, as I was more invested in the story at this point. After all the character build-up the game had, I was satisfied with how it ended. Count Bleck wasn't really meant to be this big bad guy. Instead, he's someone who is broken, and so he's kind of meant to be a letdown. This game ends with a big moment between Tippy and Cal Black, or should I say Timpani. Yes, surprise, surprise, she's revealed to be the girl from the text in between chapters. They both reveal their love for each other and decide to get married in order to save the world. In the process, they end up sacrificing themselves and go to a distant land. And then the game ends and the credit rolls. But just as we get to the end of the credits, we see them both together on a hill. And then the game fades to black. Yeah, so that's the entirety of Super Paper Mario. When I played this as a kid, I didn't fully appreciate the story. I mean, I got a few laughs from the humor sprinkled in, but I didn't realize there's a full-on love story here. For being a Nintendo game, it's surprisingly complex and it packs a lot of emotion. And this emotion is what makes the game so great. Does it have the most memorable gameplay? Probably not. Are the levels super complex? Probably not either. But what makes this game great is the little moments. The little dialogue between Tippy and Mario, the references to nerd culture, the story twists that occur during the gameplay. It all makes for a super memorable experience. Without it, this would be a very linear game, something that is similar to a new Super Mario Bros. Game. But this game shows that the true journey is the friends. Okay, I'm not going to say that. But seriously, it's one of the best stories in a Mario game, and honestly, probably one of the best in any Nintendo game. Is it better than A Thousand Year Door? Maybe not overall, but it's something that you definitely have to experience and play, even if you're a big fan of the previous games. And I know I spoiled some of the story in this video, but it's still a great experience. So please give this game a chance before you consider it forgettable or inferior. You don't want to be one of those people who complains about games they never played before. So go experience Super Paper Mario.